Okay, this video is going to go through the solution to the Chapter 6-1 homework assignment, Roll the Dice Total, I believe it's called, and give you an opportunity to do a little review on vocab, and also it's going to bring in two new terms, counting and accumulating variables. And so the first part here, we're going to take a look at the solution for the Chapter 6-1 Part 2, and so roll the dice total here. And so what we have here is we have variables that we need to know what their purpose is first of all. So round, the purpose of this, as you can see, it's in the Boolean expression, so this is the loop control variable, so it's going to keep track of the number of times the loop is iterated, and so it's going to control the loop. Roll amount is of course right here, and that is going to store the input of the user, and so it's going to store the current roll of the user. And then the total roll amount is going to add up all the rolls of the user and give a total. In fact, the total will be kept throughout the program. So it's important that you understand the purpose of each variable that you're using in your program. So as we look at this, we see that round, and you should do this on your paper along with me. So as we trace code, this is something you need to be able to do. So round is initialized to be 1, roll amount has no value yet, and total roll amount is initialized to be 0. And so as we move on here, again, the idea and the purpose of this program is to obtain the amounts for each of 3 rolls of the dice by the user, and then to add up those rolls and get a total amount. And so while round is 1, while it's less than or equal to 3, that is true. So we're going to go and jump into the loop. And so it says to roll a pair of dice, and so let's say that the user enters an 8. And so this 8 here is going to be stored in roll amount. And so here roll amount becomes 8. And then the total roll amount is going to be assigned the current roll amount, which is 0, total roll amount, and then add the new or the first amount of the roll, and that's 8. So it's going to be assigned 8. Now this is the other important thing that we talk about in class, is that it is important sometimes if you are not sure how to write the code for a particular program, then do what the program is supposed to do yourself. Do it manually. And this is something that I've actually had students do to demonstrate this. I've had them, okay, let's do the rolls, and now you calculate the new roll amount and everything. I had them go through that, and then the idea then is to, after you do that, is to then have the computer or code the computer to do what you just did. And so we just got the new total being 8, and then the round is incremented by 1. And then we go back to the while statement, and in the Boolean expression, now this is 2, and 2 is still less than or equal to 3, so we jump into the loop. The user rolls again, and let's just say that they roll a 10. And so 10 now is going to be stored in roll amount, and so it actually replaces this value, because remember, a variable can only hold one value at a time, so it replaces that. And then the total roll amount is going to be recalculated to be whatever the current roll total is, which is 8, plus the new roll is going to give the current total. And so the current total now is going to be 18. And then round, loop control variable here, gets incremented to 3. We go back to the while statement, and 3 is still less than or equal to 3. And so we jump into the loop. The user rolls again. Let's say he rolls a 7. 7 gets stored in roll amount. And then the current value of total is 18, and we're going to add now the new amount. And so now we have a total of 25 for those 3 rolls. Round gets incremented to 4. And then we go back to the while statement, and now we see that the loop control variable is 4, so it controls the loop in such a way that it stops it. And so because this is false, then we kick out of the loop, come down here, and in this first statement it says the total of your 3 rolls is total roll amount, so it calls this variable here, does a variable call, and it gets returned to 25. So it prints that statement. Alright, so that's how that works. So what I need you to do, you could pause the video, and then what I need you to do then is to answer these 5 questions down here. Don't do anything with 6 and 7, but answer 5 through 6 or 1 through 5, and then we'll look at those answers. So as we look at the answer number 1, what is the loop control variable? Of course, that's round. Where can you find the loop control variable? And then in all your programs where you have a loop, you're going to find the loop control variable is in the Boolean expression of the while statement. So don't say it's in line 7. In all your programs, all your loops, it's going to be seen in the Boolean expression of the while statement. On what line is the loop control variable initialized? It's initialized here in line 7. Where is it tested? It's tested in the Boolean expression so it gets evaluated to be true or false within the Boolean expression. And then where is it updated? Then it's going to be line 19 is where it gets updated, incremented by 1. Besides the curly braces that set the boundaries of the loop body, what are the 3 main parts of the loop? And so they are really the loop control variable being initialized, it's the loop control variable being tested, and the loop control variable being updated. And so these are the 3 parts of the loop. So when you write a loop, you need to have the loop control variable being initialized, you need to have it being tested, and then you need to have it being updated. Those have to be included in order for the loop to work. Number 4, what does line 20 tell the compiler? And so line 20 is the ending brace of the loop body, and it says to go back to the while statement. You could actually say it, and this could say it's the end of the loop, go back to the while statement. What lines are repeated in each loop iteration? And in this case, of course, it's from 14 through 19. Those are repeated each time through the loop. And these lines are called the loop body. Alright, now we're going to come to the new term. So accounting variable. What is a counting variable? A counting variable is when a how can we say this definition? It's increasing or incrementing a variable in a loop to keep track of the number of occurrences of some event. So it's increasing by 1, or you could say incrementing by 1, a variable in a loop in order to keep track of the number of occurrences of some event. So let's say that you want to keep track of the number of tests in entered in a program, then you would increment it by 1. That's a counting variable. Or if you're keeping track of the laps, you're adding 1. That is, you're keeping track, you're counting how many. So when you count, if you were to count the number of pigs in a barnyard, you would go 1, 2, 3, 4 as you're pointing to each pig. You're incrementing by 1. And so if you look up here, which one of these variables is being incremented by 1, and with the purpose of keeping track of how many times something has happened. And that would be round. Round is keeping track of the number of times that this loop is being iterated. So it's 1, 2, and 3 it's keeping track every time it goes to the loop. Alright, so then if we look at accumulating variable, the definition is repeatedly increasing a variable by some amount. Okay, now this counting variable is repeatedly increasing by some amount. But the difference is this is keeping track of the number of occurrences, the number of times something happens. Accumulating is being increased not by necessarily by 1, it could be, but by some amount, not necessarily 1, to keep track of a running total. So it keeps track of a running total. So a running total, an example of a running total would be at, let's say, like a basketball game. You know, the score on the score clock, it is keeping track of the score, the running score. And so maybe after the first period, your team's score has 20 points. And then, but it's a running total. It's continuing to be increased. It's not final yet. And so maybe after the third quarter, your team has 35 points. So the total is continuing to be increased. So it keeps track of a running total. And so this shows how to do that. So you take it, so let's say the variable that you want to that is accumulating things, is accumulating more points and more points. You take the current total and add the new addition or increase to it. Let's take a balance in a checking account. So you have a certain balance right now, here a current balance, and then you add the deposit, and that gives you a new balance. And so this keeps happening. If this is in a loop, then it's going to happen every time through the loop, and it keeps accumulating more and more and more. So at a basketball game, the accumulating variable is the scoreboard. It's the score of the visitor, and that's one variable it's accumulating, and the score of the visitor is also accumulating variable because it keeps a running total of their scores. Then you also have a counting variable. So there's another part on the score clock that keeps track of the number of fouls, the number of occurrences, the number of fouls scored by a team. So it gets increased by 1 every time that a player for a team fouls, then that score increases by 1. It's counting and being increased by 1, keeping track of the number of times there's fouls. So up here, the accumulating variable is the total roll amount, because after one roll the balance or the total is 8. After 2 rolls, now it's 18. It's being increased every time through the loop. And then after the third roll, it's now 25. So it's a running total that's being accumulated. Well, why is round not an accumulating variable? Because it's being increased. It's because this is keeping track of the number of loops, or number of times the loop is being iterated. It's not keeping track of, it's not accumulating a total. It's keeping track of the number of occurrences. If you have a soccer game, which also this will illustrate something, a soccer game, let's say the score, they score a goal, and so your team has 1 point. Then they score another goal, now they have 2. And then they score another goal, they have 3. Maybe they score another one, they have 4. So the question is, is the score of a soccer team, is that a counting variable because it's increasing by 1? Or is it an accumulating variable? Is it keeping track of a running total? And so if you think about it, it looks like it's a counting variable because it's going 1, 2, 3, 4. But the problem, it's not keeping track of the number of occurrences, the number of fouls that is occurring or anything like that. What it's doing is it's keeping track of the running total of points that are being scored in a game. And they just happen to increase by 1 each time because that's all you can score in a goal or in a soccer match is 1 at a time. Where in a basketball game it's a lot easier because sometimes you add 1 point, sometimes 2, and sometimes 3. Alright, so that is that's the difference between accumulating and counting variables, and these are examples of how you code those things to take place in a program, and this is an important thing to understand and be able to use in your coding.